Calf Kick Sports.
Good afternoon, folks. Thanks for joining us. This is the Calf Kick Sports Podcast. My name is Tim Wheaton, and today we are joined by a special guest, Cody the Renegade Gibson. He is fighting January 28th in Eagle Fighting Championship against Ray Borg. Folks, make sure to check it out. Cody, thank you for coming on the show, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Tim.
Absolutely. We were just talking off the air. Let's just pick it right up where we were. You get up at 5 a.m. to train every day? What is wrong with you, man?
4 a.m. is 4:05 is my alarm, so I get up at 4:05, and then I'm at the gym by 5. I get in a session before work, and then I go work all day, and then I get in another session either immediately after work or some days I get a little break, and then I go after that. So that's just the schedule I kind of adhere to, and it sucks sometimes, but you get used to it, and you got to make it work,
Dude, it's rough. Now, I do remember fighters within your lineage. You've been training at the pit for quite a while now. Guys like Chuck Liddell trained at the pit as well. And he had talked about that he likes to do training at like 10 p.m. at night because that's when he's fighting. Is it hard to get up and go do stuff at 4 and 5 a.m. and then fight at 11 p.m.?
I mean, I've done some of that stuff before too, where if you're fighting somewhere where the time zone is going to be a lot different, just getting in some training sessions, not necessarily like making it a part of your weekly routine or yearly routine, but in the lead up to the fight, getting some training sessions around the time that you're actually going to compete, especially if it's drastically different than your schedule. But yeah, I mean, I train. So on Saturdays we go to it's known as around here is the compound. Mm-hmm. And it's at John Hackelman's house, and he's got a cage, and he's got a gazebo over the cage. It's outdoors. He lives up on the mountains. So he lives on the coast, but he's up on a cliff, essentially. And the compound has a very rich history. Guys like BJ Penn, Jake Shields, Tim Kennedy, obviously Glover Teixeira, Chuck Liddell. So there's been a lot of guys over the years that have been there and had done training camps there. John also has, tons of weights and wheelbarrows. And so after we're done sparring, whatever workout he's planned for us with the wheelbarrows, I've got hill sprints and we've got wheelbarrow stuff to do. Every Saturday is a gruesome workout. So I love it.
Man, you have to love it because otherwise it's a grueling, tough workout you guys are doing, running uphill with wheelbarrows and stuff like this. And you mentioned Glover Teixeira. Your last fight, you fought at ex-MMA 3. By the way, Big Mo, we just had him on the show last week. He says hi. He's like, man, Cody's my boy. Cool guy. He is, man. He's awesome. But yeah, he loved you as well. So, but I wanted to ask about you fought on the same weekend as Glover Teixeira, a guy who had trained at the pit previously. You guys both won on the same weekend. It's a big deal.
Yeah, Glover's been here a couple of times. He lives in Connecticut. He has a gym over there. But he was at the pit for many, many years. He was really the unsung hero of Chuck Liddell's day. He was Chuck's main training partner, and nobody knew he was the Brazilian that nobody had ever heard of or knew as Chuck, rose to the prominence that he rose. And it's great to see Glover get his kind of moment in the sun and his time to shine, especially, I mean, how old is he? He's like 40 something, 42.
Yeah, he's like 95 or something like that. Yeah.
Hey, but it's great. It's great to see. And really the things that have been working for Glover in his fights are the fundamentals that make up the core foundation of the fighting system that they've built here over the last 30 years. So for me, I came in here about a little over 2 years ago. I moved here and I've been training here, and I've been learning a ton about their system and kind of adapting it to my game. And man, when you see a guy like Glover go out and execute, and a lot of people recognize, things he's doing, and they're like, okay, he gets the guy down. He's got really good jiu-jitsu, and he beats the guy up, and he, gets in dominant positions and ends up choking him out or whatever. But when you actually learn that system of grappling and the ideology behind it, and then you see it implemented in the cage at the highest level, It's pretty cool, man. It's been pretty cool to see. So definitely a motivator for me.
And I think they also have, it's a huge motivator. It's great to see him win, but at the pit, you were talking about their fighting systems. I think they have a special name. Like it's a Kenpo based, and then for their jiu-jitsu, is it like pit jitsu or something like that? Or are there special names for it?
Yeah, the whole John Halkeman's originally from Hawaii, and so it's called Kempo Karate. Is the name of his, I guess, his he started it. You know, it's got aspects of kind of like the Kempo karate stuff, but it's kind of like Sambo too, you know. They train like the normal like day class, like or evening, like, you know, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock class. Adults, just like people looking for recreational to learn how to defend themselves and get in shape at the same time. That whole Kempo karate stuff, it reminds me a lot of Sambo because they're in a gi, a karate gi. They're learning striking, while at the same time they're learning aspects of wrestling, jiu-jitsu. The whole basic concept is to, you know, give people the skills that they need to defend themselves and things like that. Specifically the jiu-jitsu, it's a guy by the name of Justin Frazier, who nobody knows of, but unless you are Tim Kennedy or Jake Shields or some of these guys who grew up and Justin Frazier was with them over here. And man, I've trained at a lot of jiu-jitsu gyms. I kind of came up in a sport jiu-jitsu gym, so very competitive, always going to the world championships with a big team and high-level sport jiu-jitsu guys. That's really how I came up. I was going to tournaments all the time. And to come over here and see a completely different system based around mixed martial arts, that was always the thing about fighting for me, was I had to piece together a training camp and a coaches. I had a boxing coach, I had a jiu-jitsu coach, I had a strength coach, but I didn't really have like an MMA gym. And you're trying to piece it together, and you're trying to take things from each of those people and each of those kind of sports. How do these apply to mixed martial arts, right? There's aspects of jiu-jitsu that do not apply to mixed martial arts. There's aspects of wrestling that if I were to do that wrestling move in a mixed martial arts fight, it's a bad idea. In a wrestling match, it's a different story, but in a mixed martial arts fight, probably a good idea. Same with boxing. And you're trying to figure out how to put it all together so that it works in this sport. When I moved over here, that's really what their whole system is. It's how do we teach jiu-jitsu for fighting, not for scoring an advantage point in a tournament or anything like that, but for actual combat. And how do we negate some of that jiu-jitsu stuff that, you know, and it's a lot of wrestling oriented jiu-jitsu. It's not, you know, I mean, I used to train. I mean, I just remember like drilling triangle armbar, omoplata, triangle armbar, omoplata. And every single day we're drilling from our back. That is the kind of jiu-jitsu I came from. And now to come into one that's very much, you know, I still drill those things, but it's not a part of the core system here. It's about top control, not allowing guys up. You know, if you watch a guy like Khabib, what separates him from the rest of the pack? Yes, he's a really good wrestler. He's strong as hell, you know, all that stuff. But he wasn't an Olympic gold medalist. It's when he gets on top, you don't get up, you know, you get stuck there. And so it's that kind of ideology that I really have kind of bought into. And I'm still learning, man. I'm 34 years old. I've been fighting forever, it feels like. And every day is still, that's what I think part of the rejuvenation of my career is, because I moved somewhere else and, you know, I feel like a kid again, you know, like learning every day. So it's been fun.
Well, I think, man, you threw a lot at me here, but I think with going from jiu-jitsu and learning wrestling, they're obviously both ground sports, but I think wrestlers can lend themselves extremely well to jiu-jitsu because they think about the ground game a little bit different. And we saw this with the quintet like a year ago, where all the UFC wrestlers could do extremely well in jiu-jitsu, because what they were trying to do, like you said, is not quite looking for submissions, is more like Khabib or like a Matt Hughes, or kind of example of, I'm looking for positional control and you're going to have to just deal with that. I don't care what you do to me. I'm going from position A to position B, and then that's what we are doing in this fight. Don't worry about the submission, right? Am I way off in saying that?
No, I think there's something new to that, you know. Everybody, you know, I mean, it's cool. Always fun to see when someone gets taken down and they have a very active guard and they're throwing stuff up left and right. Obviously, that's fun to watch. But sometimes you can get yourself caught in, if you're not going to secure the submission, you're going to get smashed on, you know, from that, you know, going for that leg lock or going for that whatever it is, you know, and there's something to be said about being able to control a guy and just, man, like a guy like I was telling you about Justin Frazier, like if you want to be like completely demoralized grappling, because he gives you outs, like it's like, you know, I know this is an overused analogy, but you know, it's like a game of chess, right? Like you're trying to look moves ahead. What are my outs from this position? What are my outs from that position? And the thing about him is he already knows what you're going to do from that position. And then you try to do it and he's waiting for you. He just surfs on you and you can't get him off you. And the harder you try to get out, the more tired you get. And he's always a step ahead. And then, you know, 2 minutes in, you've done it. You've put 100% effort to get back to your feet or get out of that position. And all you've gotten is tired. And then he really takes over and starts beating you up. Because I wear my MMA gloves at jiu-jitsu every day now, and we're punching, and it's different. And obviously, we're not hurting each other, punching each other hard, but we find ourselves in positions. If I could hammer fist you 15 times in the face as you go for this armbar, maybe you shouldn't be going for this armbar, you know, like that kind of stuff. So, man, I've learned so much, and yeah, exactly kind of the points you were making.
Well, and with striking in jiu-jitsu, it's not completely unheard of. There's combat jiu-jitsu hosted by Eddie Bravo, and it's a really great show. And I feel like, because it's open hand strikes, which is what they were doing in Pancrase, really does change the dynamic of what you're doing. Even if it's supposed to be a slap, an open palm strike is hard, and striking in jiu-jitsu really does change it, right?
Yeah, I was actually just watching. I always get the UFC Fight Pass. I'll subscribe when I need it. Like, okay, I got a fight. This guy has a bunch of fights on Fight Pass, so I need it. So I'll get it. And then when I don't need it, I usually get rid of it. And anyway, I got it for Ray Borg fight. And I started watching some of that combat jiu-jitsu stuff that they had on there. And that was the first time I'd really sat down and taken some time to watch it. But yeah, it totally changes the dynamics of things, you know? And plus, man, I watch those guys. If somebody slapped me in the face, like there's something about that that's like worse than getting punched in the face, you know?
Cosign. Like, I'm totally with you on that. If someone punches me, I'm like, okay, I know what we're about. If someone slaps me, I'm just like, what the fuck is wrong with you? What is so? I'm glad you segued. I've asked one question. You're an easy conversation. So I wanted to segue in. Previous fight, you defeated John Dodson at MMA 3. Huge win there. Congratulations on that. He's a power striker from a southpaw stance. Now you're fighting Ray Borg, who's an orthodox, kind of more top position wrestler. This is kind of one of the more interesting things about MMA is that you're always switching styles. But these are two different stances, two different styles. How do you apply a game plan? How do you get ready for a very different opponent than what you saw in your last fight?
You know, with Dodson, I don't think I'd ever had a fight where I had such a game plan, you know, like, you know, how are we going to beat this guy who moves? He's fast. You know, you're not going to get faster than John Dodson in 8 weeks. I'm just not going to do it. Like, you know, when he explodes, he's fast, and there's nothing I can do about that. So how can we negate some of those blitzes and stuff like that? It was just he's southpaw, he's so short and explosive, and he's a counter striker. He wants to have you, you know, he wants you to come in and counter off of something you throw at him when you overextend. Hard guy to take down, hard guy to keep down. All of those things. And so we trained very specifically for 2 camps for him. And it's kind of nice to stop training for John Dodson. I got an orthodox fighter, more of a traditional kickboxer. He's not bad on his feet, but yeah, he's really, everything's geared towards setting up his takedowns and trying to keep top control, a good grappler. It's been fun, man. To me, it just kind of makes it fun again. I'm tired. You know, I was tired of training for South. I had like a bunch of southpaw fights, it felt like, in a row. And so it's nice to not have to do that. And I don't have to game plan quite as much for a guy like Ray Borg. Obviously, the grappling aspect you do, but as far as his striking, he's pretty standard, standard kickboxer. Little things I see from him, counters, you'll see explode and burst, but less tricky, more of stuff I've seen, in gyms. So I'm excited, man. It's been fun.
Well, I think your last fight, I think you're almost selling yourself short, but that you did all those training camps and it worked. It worked extremely well. There were specific things that you were doing where you were backing away from his blitzes, breaking off the center line and firing back right hands. It was working extremely well. It was a very good performance on your part, man.
Thank you. Sometimes it works. Sometimes you watch them fight and you're like, why are these guys all moving straight backwards against them? They're just going straight backwards into the cage. Like, why would you do that? And then like you get in there and sometimes I would read them and like, okay, here comes that blitz. It's coming. It's about to come. And then boom, I'd get off that center line and make that correct kind of a, retreat. And other times he'd beat you and then you're like, shit. And then you're just like, you're in a position where literally your only out is straight backwards. Yep. And so I got to experience it firsthand and learn why so many other guys have been in that same situation. But yeah, I'm a big believer in film study and all that kind of stuff. So I study film like probably too much. Like I stopped watching shows and stuff, during a fight camp because all I do during my spare time is watch my opponent's fights from as far back as I can find him. I want to see his whole career and his progression. And so I watch everything I can and obsess over it. So, yeah.
Man, it's obsessive going into a fight like that. Does that help handle anxiety? Because your last fight was a big fight. You were in the main event slot. Now it's another really big fight in Eagle Fighting Championships. Is this something that helps with anxiety, or do you do other stuff to kind of handle the stress and anxiety of going into a fight?
For me, it's just become a part of my process. And that's where I have my confidence. Like I don't have a lot of confidence in myself. I have a lot of confidence in the process that I put myself through to get ready for a fight. So that's a part of the process. And if I weren't to do it, then I feel like I would lose confidence for sure.
Definitely. Any beef with Ray Borg coming up, or is it all business for you?
Yeah, I don't know him, he seems like a nice guy. He's a family man, just like me. So I got nothing. Man, when you see a guy, he's got kids and he's got a wife and he's doing his thing and he's trying to make it work. Like I can't, most of these fighters, we have more in common with each other than not, so I'm at the point where, I still never really like my opponent until after, until the fight. I just don't, I'm not a guy who's going to like want to hang out and talk to you prior to fighting you. And I'm probably going to not be kind or, just not necessarily be an asshole to anybody, but I just can't engage with you like that after the fight, maybe, but not before. But yeah, nothing in particular with Ray Borg.
Gotcha. Yeah. Are you a big trash talker, or is that just something you don't bother in at all?
I don't talk trash. I really like, but I'm intense by the time we get to weigh-ins, and I'm there to hurt you, like that's my mentality when I show up to, I get off the plane or whatever the case may be. And I'm there and I'm pretty locked in. So that's just the way I am, but not really trash talk, but some of these guys, like, man, they really enjoy the fight week and they try to keep things light. I'm pretty intense, man. I try to have, just go through the process, but I'm there with a mentality that I'm trying to hurt somebody. So
you're trying to hurt someone, and it's an odd thing because it's based in respect and it's based in honor, and we are actually doing martial arts here. And I've asked other fighters this, like Frank Shamrock had talked about this, and I think Evan Tanner had talked about this. But do you find any peace in the cage? Is it a peaceful place when you're fighting other human beings?
Yeah, there's something weird to say about that, but really it is about, like, I think we're all searching for that perfect performance, like just the most, Calvin Kattar last night, what, that performance, obviously the big win, everybody was counting him out, all that stuff, but that performance, like, I don't know how Calvin Kattar's career is going to continue and where it all ends in 10 years from now when we look back on it. That performance will be a highlight of his career, and that's the kind of performance I'm always searching for, and that's what I focus on is how do I perform? If I perform well to the best of my ability and I really flow, the win's going to be there. I don't have to worry about that or think about that too much, but trying to, you know, what are the little things I have to do to have that flawless performance? That's kind of where I kind of, that's what I'm thinking about the whole week.
And Calvin's a really good example because he just came off, like you said, a perfect performance, crowding the kicker. He clearly had a game plan going in and executed it perfectly. The guy was well ready. He was well prepared. He definitely watched tape going in, just like you are in your upcoming fight against Ray Borg.
Yeah, and everybody was counting him out. You know, every one of these guys, man, they've all got, you know. And I like the MMA media for the most part, but some of these guys all have podcasts, and it's like I was watching some of them, and everybody was counting him out. You know, like, you know, yeah, he's a guy. I saw one video where a guy was talking about the betting lines, and even saying that even though Giga was a minus 250 or something, you should still bet on him because it's so obvious that he's going to win. And all that, like, you know, how is Cater? It's just stylistically a horrible matchup for him. He's going to have to deal with that kick. And, you know, there's a lot of questions surrounding him over the Max Holloway fight and how he's going to come back from that. And some of this is all like legitimate, you know, thought, but, you know, a lot of these guys don't really know fighting, to be honest with you. And I'm not saying that you can't be a good analyst and not have come from fighting. You definitely can, and they're out there. But sometimes when, you know, there are ways to get her. If someone fights at Giga's range and he fires that kick 50 times, he's going to look like a superstar. But there are ways around every style of fighting, and you know, different tactics that you can employ to make things different. You know, and yeah, I don't know. It was cool to see for sure.
But on MMA and analysts, an MMA media and analyst, it is there's almost two camps. And I like that they're separate camps. It's when you mix the two camps of, on one side, these people aren't analysts at all. They're just here to talk fighting, and they like the drama and they like fighting. That's fine. They're not pretending to be analysts. And a good example of that is like John Anik and Ariel Helwani. Neither are pretending to be analysts, but they're super into the rest of the sport. Yeah. And then on the other side, you have really good analysts like Heavy Hands and Jack Slack, but who are basically coaches, right? Like they are high level people within the industry. It's when you get some of the drama people like me who are doing technical breakdowns and you're like, man, shut the hell up. You're an idiot, Tim. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's some stuff I see, like one of the guys I listen to from time to time. I'm not a huge fan, but he does have good stuff sometimes, is Luke Thomas.
Luke, yeah, Luke's a good boy. I like Luke a lot.
He's got good stuff sometimes, but again, watch his pre-show of that Calvin Kattar fight and then say that he was really knowledgeable. Like, you got it wrong big time, man. And I'm not saying that most people weren't in your camp before that fight. And I'm not saying that some of the stuff you were saying, I don't even agree with, you know, that's good. Yeah, there's some dynamics here, but sometimes they miss some of the things you can't see, I guess, unless you've done it, you know. And that was an example that I kind of saw the last couple of days, but yeah.
Yeah, and Luke Thomas on air will be that, like, here's my technical breakdown. I'm not a fighter or a coach, but here's what I see. And I almost feel like that's good to put that in there. You know what I mean? I'm like, I really don't believe anything I'm saying here, but here's what I see, at least, you know?
Yeah. And at the end, like I said, I'm not trying to, you know, sometimes I learn stuff from him when I'm listening to him. I'm like, that's a good point. You know, I didn't think of it that way. But yeah, you see those times where they miss it because they don't understand that. You know, Calvin Kattar, man, he went out and that game plan was perfect, you know, and everyone's talking about the slip. Like, somehow that was like when the first round, that crazy takedown, if he hadn't secured that, like, that was going to happen no matter what. It was just going to, sometimes when you're trying to walk a guy down, it takes a little bit of time until you figure out how to do it. If you just go out and start walking them down, you're going to eat shots. You know, they're at their 100% best. So you've got to start, you know, it might take a round to figure out, you know, where are they exploding? How are they moving? And then you find that range and you start that walk down process. That was a crazy takedown. And I think that did contribute to Giga tiring out for sure. But I just got to think that, I mean, they went 25 minutes in there, and most of those 25 minutes, Kattar, you know, from round 2 on, he was pressing forward, and Giga did not look like he wanted. And he's coming from King's MMA. And And at King's MMA, those guys spar like 100%, like 3 times a week. Like there's concussions in there all the time. Those guys are brutal over there, man. They don't give a shit. And I like that. You know, I've trained with Benil Dariush a few times, and Rafael dos Anjos, and man, those guys are savages over there. So that was interesting, man. But he's probably never getting walked down like that, you know?
Yeah. The thing is, so with like you said, with the second round onwards, it was like he saw Giga's kind of the overextension on the punches, and that's when his really good slips were coming in, right? Because then he's seeing the same thing over and over again. But there is something to be said with hard sparring, and I'm going to use an example of Fabricio Verdum did a lot of hard sparring at the Chute Box gym, and he was a guy who was purely jiu-jitsu. And what happens with hard sparring, like you would have at King's MMA, is that you end up focusing into certain techniques that you excel at. And for Fabricio Verdum, it was like a 1-2 and a front kick. And that's all he ever did on the feet in MMA, is basically those two things, because he quickly learned that's what I'm good at. And when we see that with Giga as well, it's like he found 3 techniques: the kick to the open side, the liver kick, and his 1-2 basically. And I think hard sparring influences that. And I think it was who stopped sparring? Was it like Stephen Thompson or Max Holloway maybe was the one who was like, no, it was Robbie Lawler. Robbie Lawler says, I don't spar at all because I find I just focus on what I'm good at when I'm sparring, as opposed to hitting mitts. Then I'm throwing a diversity of strikes. Anyway, we're just chatting. This isn't an interview. What do you think?
No, but I think, yeah, you're onto something, because if you're sparring hard, like you're going to throw the things that work for you the best.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, yeah, you might, even if there's a difference between hard sparring and just like kind of touch sparring sometimes. Light sparring, like, you know, not too heavy, especially to the head, and just try not to hurt each other. I do that too. You know, not every time. I do hard sparring too, but there's days where I don't. And you get to work on things, you know, as opposed to, you know, if I'm going to try something new in a hard sparring session and it doesn't work and I get my jaw's hurt in the next 3 days because I got clipped hard because of it, you know, I might be a little more hesitant to try that stuff in hard sparring, you know? So I think, yeah, there's something to be said about what you're saying for sure.
Yeah, and I'm just using other people's wisdom. That's not me. But let me get some fight breakdowns from you, because I'm curious. Eagle Fighting Championship 44. This is coming up on January 28th. In the main event, you have Tyrone Spong versus Sergei Kharitonov, a legendary kickboxer versus a legendary fighter. What is your breakdown for this main event fight?
I've followed Spong for a long time, man. When he was, what was was it World Series of Fighting? He had a couple fights in.
Yeah, I think he had a couple MMA fights in WSOF back in the day. But before that, obviously, like K1, it's Showtime. Yeah. Like, he's an amazing kickboxer.
It was interesting to see him kind of transition over, but he's an older guy. I don't even know how active he's been. He was a killer, you know, as a kickboxer, and even in MMA, you know, he could tell he was a killer. But I don't know. I think it's one of those fights where neither guy has been super active, you know, and both are older. There's just too many variables, you know, for me to be able to be like, yeah, I think this is what's going to happen in that fight, because there's too many unknowns, you know?
I think Spong still hasn't fought since his leg break against Gokhan Saki, which was, I think, like 8 years ago now. So it's been a little while. And Sergei Kharitonov, I remember Sergei fighting in Pride in like 2006, and he's been an old man for 15 years. Like he hasn't aged, but he's been 40 forever. Am I wrong in this?
No, I think that's pretty. I remember him too, and he's still around. And yeah, he's still doing it.
You're working at Eagle Fighting Championships. This is a promotion from Khabib Nurmagomedov. Have you spoken to the big lightweight at all? Have you talked to the big guy?
No, I haven't had an opportunity to yet. Yeah, and I used to be with my old management team was with Conor, was with Conor's guys at Paradigm Sports Management out of Utah, and gotcha. So I got to meet Conor a couple times and stuff like that. But yeah, some of these, I mean, these are all just fighters, you know. At the end of the day, like, but Khabib's a special one, you know. I'd like to meet him and pick his brain. But yeah, at the end of the day, like, you could only hold, I think until you're maybe done fighting, you could only hold these guys in such high esteem in your mind. Even though I'm never going to fight, you know, 155s or anything like that, you know.
But still. So what's Conor McGregor like in person? You've spoken to him a couple of times. Is he a hardcore guy? Is he super chill in person?
He was fighting that week. We fought on the same card at UFC 178, and that was when his first time fighting Dustin Poirier, and he got that knockout. And so yeah, I saw he was definitely in fight mode. So he was in his character mode and that whole thing. So I don't know how much of I don't know him on a personal level.
Yeah. If he's like that all the time, like you said, like when fighters are going into a fight, they're a different person. They're going into fight mode. They're different people.
Yeah.
So you get a win. John Dodson, you're about to get a win over Ray Borg for the rest of the year. We're still early in January. What's the goal for the rest of the year? Are you looking at a one championship, a UFC, a Bellator, something like that? They all have amazing weight classes for where you're competing. What do you think for the rest of the year?
I just want to stay active and keep fighting. I think that, for me at my age and where I'm at, the reason I'm taking fights against guys like John Dodson and Ray Borg is because I'm trying to build a trying to build a resume that, shows the UFC that I'm not just trying to get back to their organization, but I'm ready to be, thrown in with the top 15. I don't really have the time to come up the ranks and have 6 or 7 fights before. I'm not a Sean O'Malley kind of like, we're going to bring you up over the next 3-4 years, or Aaron Pico or whatever. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, I'm ready now. And I'm 34. So if you try that, you give me guys at the bottom of the ring, I'll be 38 by the time I'm fighting these guys at the top. And that's just not realistic. So it's kind of like, I'm trying to beat guys with names who have been, fought for titles, who have been in the rankings and everybody knows, because I'm trying to get back. When I get back to the UFC, I want to fight with either a guy in the top 15 or someone some prospect that is on the verge, and it's going to get me that fight in the rankings sooner than later. So I'm trying to, time is of the essence, so to speak. And,
who's your hot call out? Like we got one, Bellator, UFC. Who do you want to fight? Who's your call out from one of these?
Oh man, there's so many good matchups. So many guys I'd love to fight. From Bellator, I like to fight Stotts. I was actually called him out after a fight I had a couple of years ago when he was still fighting the LFA, and I had a fight in the LFA and I won the fight, and then I called him out, and then they gave the guy I beat the fight with Stotts. I ended up leaving and going to Bellator, so I didn't ever get that fight. UFC, man, there's so many guys I want to fight. I think that Yanez kid, if I'm thinking of guys like at the bottom of the 15 to get me into that top 15, Yanez is the guy I love to fight. He looks fun to fight. I got to train with Ricky Simone years ago, so I'm pretty much friends with him, or friendly. We have the same management as well, but I love to mix it up with Ricky. He's a really fun guy to watch fight. I like to test my wrestling against his. There's so many guys, man. Casey Kenny was a guy who came up with the Tachi Palace a little bit after I did. And I think he was a 25 pounder back then. And he eventually moved up to 35s, but he's a fun guy. I've known about him for a long time. So many, man. I want to fight these guys,
Find them all, man. Just want them all. What about if you were to move right now? Celebrity YouTube boxing is kind of the trend. If you were to call like maybe a YouTube influencer, maybe an MMA media member, who would you want to fight in some like YouTube celebrity pay-per-view match?
What YouTube person?
Or a YouTube person, or like an MMA media personality or someone like that. Is there a call out that you have on that?
Oh man, what's funny is that a lot of times when these YouTuber guys box or whatever, they have these different events. I'm getting to the age where I don't know who the hell they are.
Yeah.
I have no idea who some like name is. They're like, word is that Floyd Mayweather is gonna fight this guy, or I'm like, I don't know who that is, because
I still don't know who that guy is, man.
I didn't know who Jake Paul was until he started in on the MMA stuff. Like, I asked my students in my classroom, like, who's Jake Paul? Because I didn't know who he was.
We're too old for this anymore. Like, we're gonna fight someone from like MTV when we were growing up or something like that.
Exactly. That's where I'm coming from. So I don't know. I don't have any call outs for those guys. I don't know.
Now, speaking of, what do you teach? I saw that you're a teacher on Wikipedia. I'm not sure how up to date it is. What are you teaching at the moment?
I teach primarily AP US history. so juniors in high school, and the AP is advanced placement. So if they're able to not only just pass my class, but if they're able to pass the AP exam, then they get college credit. So it's kind of a fun. I look at it almost like a competition with the kids. Like, can we do it? And we kind of strive toward it all year. So it's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now I'm a huge history buff myself. I've heard that you're a huge history buff, right?
Oh yeah, big into politics and history, and that's probably outside of fighting my biggest passion is history and talking about social science in general.
Was it U.S. history that specifically kind of inspired? I find most people kind of start at World War II and go from there. But where did you start in your history journey?
I think I've always just had an inquisitive kind of mind that wanted to know how things worked in the world and why. Like whenever you see something, you're just like, and if you have that kind of mind, it's like, how does that work? And there's certain people that are like that with like mechanics or like the mechanics of something. Like my brother-in-law could fix anything. He's got a huge warehouse at his house where he's working on stuff, and he's always, and that's not me, I'm more of like, I see something in society, like a homeless person, and I think, well, why is he homeless? We live in the richest country in the world, like, why does that exist? Let's try to, unwrap that onion. And that's at a very basic level, core level, but I've always kind of thought like that and thought about how you could, I think at the end of the day, like you always think about things like, how can I contribute to making the world a better place? And obviously maybe becoming a fighter wasn't a part of that journey, but
Yeah, I know what you're saying. That one was for me. Everything else I'll do in my life is going to be for you guys. Okay, is that square? So maybe you're going to be a teacher. You're going to be talking to lots of people. You're going to be fighting from where you're living. Maybe politics in your future, do you think, 10, 15 years down the line?
Oh, you mean like become a politician?
Yeah.
I don't know about that, I don't know if I would ever become a politician.
It seems like to get change done, you could work with a nonprofit to be more effective than a politician. You feel like you're too much part of the system and you're a politician, but maybe stop me when I'm wrong here, right?
No, Martin Luther King Jr. was never a politician. He never was a member of Congress or anything like that. And look at the changes he made for the country. So, yeah, I don't know if I'd be more of like the activist type. I'm pretty anti-establishment in general. So I don't know if I want to. It just seems like the barrier to entry means you gotta check all these boxes and sign up to do these A, B, C, D with this team, and that just I'm the renegade. I kind of fly by the seat of my pants. So
yeah, I can co-sign with that. You end up becoming a bit too normal and toothless to kind of go into the politics route, and I can co-sign with that. But with studying history, especially U.S. history, World War II, there's a few other examples of like Roman history. You find a lot of this is that the first layer is pretty great, and you study it. Or sorry, the first layer of the community is pretty great, and then as soon as you go to the second layer of the community, there's a very like entrenched base of white supremacists. Do you find this as well as you're studying history of like, oh, one step too deep, and now I'm into white supremacy territory?
Do you mean as far as explain a little bit more?
The community who are history enthusiasts. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, okay. So I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Not studying history itself. Love studying history. It's the community around history.
Man, I see what you're saying. You'll have like Civil War buffs and stuff, and you can get there's some pretty weird people that are into that kind of stuff for some pretty weird reasons.
Yes.
But I don't know, man. I think that I try to think about the lessons we can learn. I try to look at it from like the big picture, like think of the United States as a Roman Empire, from a more, broader perspective, and like, kind of zoom out of US history and think, is this on its way out? Is this on the decline? Let's look at other examples from long ago in different places that had empires that expanded. I think that we get too safe as Americans, and we think that this, we have a very short attention span and recollection of the past. And I think looking at history, from a broader perspective, and man, there's just so much so much going on right now, with technology. And I kind of think personally that we're going through a technological revolution in similar fashion of the Industrial Revolution from 120 years ago, that second wave of the Industrial Revolution, where capitalism really became what it was and what it is. And I think that you look at cause and effect of industrialization, you look at cause and effect of technology. I think there's some parallels that we could really learn from. I don't think we're going to learn them. I got no hope that we're going to actually learn any of those lessons.
That's probably right. Yeah.
But I think it's very interesting. For me, it's just like I could geek out on that stuff all day and looking at parallels of it all. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, man. Co-sign on that. But we'll get back to the fist fighting. We'll avoid controversy and get back to fist fighting. Do you have any advice for people entering the sport of MMA?
Advice. There's been so many like young guys that have come in and had some amateur fights and kind of disappeared over the years and come in and, man, I mean, everybody has different goals. Sometimes that's okay. The guys just want to come in and they want to learn. They want to learn martial arts and have the experience of having an amateur fight, and then they're going to move on with their lives. But if this is something that you're like, I don't know, like personally, like I don't think I think I was born to be a fighter. Like there is no truer time in my life that I feel like myself than when I'm fighting. Like I feel like this is what I was meant to do. And I'm not saying that I'm some sort of like, the great, some sort of hidden gem that's going to become the greatest of all time. But that's still the way I feel. Like I'm in my element most when I'm fighting. And if you have that kind of passion and that's how you feel, like you were born to do this, the things in your life that you've experienced have led you to this. And this is why, there's some sort of force outside of yourself that's brought you to this. Man, the same thing you would tell anybody, that wants to be successful at anything, dive head in, don't be afraid to say, I'm going to make decisions about my life at 18, 19 years old that might not go hand in hand with what you would see as your version of success. I might be living on a gym floor, and yeah, I could have gone to college or I could have, done this or that, but, I'm going to make the choice to kind of sacrifice and I don't know, just to really give yourself every opportunity and be focused at a young age and understand that the competition's only getting tougher. It's only getting harder. You look at some of those early days and like, if you were a solid wrestler, you could have had a lot of success in this sport without really much else, and like, obviously that's not the case anymore. You've got to be comfortable with getting punched in the face, and you've got to learn a lot of stand up, and you got to learn a lot of ground stuff, and it's getting harder. So but if you're into it, man, and you're really into it, just dive in. I have regrets about like you think about like I'm a full-time teacher, and I was always relatively practical about fighting, and how much of that I allowed to consume me, and then how much I stayed the course of college and, security and job and things like that. And had I said, screw it at 20 years old, and just, I'm moving to Sacramento, or I'm moving to Florida, or I'm moving to Canada, and I'm going to train with, what would that have looked like? So for an 18, 19-year-old kid who's really pursuing this to become a world champion, I would recommend that they do that if that is truly their passion. So,
man, that was a great speech. I love to hear that. And the sport is tough and it's getting tougher. I'm just going to ask you one more question here. Is weight cutting the toughest part of MMA?
I mean, the training's pretty damn tough, training and just that day. That's why I think so many wrestlers have so much success, because they're used to just beating the shit out of their body every day and then having to recover and come back and do it again the next day. And they're used to doing it with the same body parts and the same muscles that are sore that yesterday are going to be sore today because I'm wrestling again. That's the thing about MMA that's a little bit better, is that, you have a couple of hard wrestling days a week. You also have a couple of days of striking a week, and sometimes those blend together, but usually, you know, wrestling, man, it's the same thing, the same muscles used every single day. So it's a real grind. But yeah, the training's hard, but the weight cut sucks too. The weight cut sucks. Some guys just struggle more than others, man.
What foods do you miss most on the weight cut? I know we're like 2 weeks out right now, but what foods do you miss most?
I don't eat any bread or rice or potatoes. I don't eat any of that stuff when I'm training. I'm in training camp for a fight. I still get carbs from vegetables.
I'd rather you just kick me in the head. I don't want to cut stuff out of my diet. You can punch me. I don't care, but I want to eat the stuff, right?
Yeah. I mean, I miss a sandwich. You know, things like that I miss, you know. I get really sick of salad, you know, because I eat a lot of salads. I make a lot of salads with different vegetables, and I'm trying to mix it up, and I just get so sick of them. But yeah, it is what it is. You know, this is what we signed up for, so I'm not going to bitch and complain about it.
It's tough. It's a tough sport, but you're living well in it, and you're gonna have you're already off to a good start in this 2022. You're gonna get a win later this month. My name is Tim Wheaton with Kafka Sports. You can check me out, Tim Wheaton MMA, on Instagram and Twitter and elsewhere. We have Cody Gibson. He is fighting Ray Borg on January 28th at Eagle Fighting Championship 44. You get the last word here. Tell the people, where can they find more of you? Where can we check out the event? All that good stuff. Shout out anyone you need to shout out. Go ahead, Cody.
Yeah, the fight's it's a Friday night, the 28th of January. So there shouldn't be too much else competition wise with fighting. I don't think, maybe a LFA show or something, but it's free to watch. You've got to download an app, and if you go to Eagle FC, they'll have the app. I already downloaded it, and clean app, free, easy entry, no barriers to entry. So yeah, just check out the fight, man. I think me and Ray Borg are gonna put on a good show. It's going to be a competitive fight. I'm hoping to knock him out. So we'll see. But and some other interesting fights on the card too, you know. A lot of interesting fights. And they just added a bunch more. So you got him, Barao coming back, Rashad Evans. Yep. So some interesting fights. Some prospects are on the show. They've kind of got a nice little mix of stuff. So if you're a hardcore MMA fan, you know, it's definitely one you don't want to miss. So yeah, tune in, man. It's gonna be fun to watch.
Thank you so much for your time, Cody.
Hey, take care. We'll see you later.
You're watching Calf Kick Sports.